Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. There have been many coaches in NFL history to grace the sidelines, but I think if I had to choose the quietest, most ho-hum guy, the guy that said the least, the guy that never spoke, and the guy that had no personality whatsoever, I'd probably go with this man right here, Buddy Ryan. Ryan never really spoke. He never talked to the press about anything. He never tried to get into fights with people or get into a war of words. Of course, everything that I just said was highly sarcastic, because perhaps there are no coaches in football who spoke more than Buddy Ryan did. Ryan never met a microphone that he didn't like. I'll just put it that way. It didn't matter if he was the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, the head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, or the head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles Southern team, otherwise known as the mid-90s Arizona Cardinals. Buddy Ryan had quite the personality. And this personality and desire to hear himself talk and create controversy even happened with teams and coaches that he was in no way whatsoever rivals with. At least when Jerry Glanville and Sam Weiss spoke about each other and delivered barbs and jabs and punches, the two men genuinely hated each other and played each other twice a year. Because did you know that the Arizona Cardinals and Cincinnati Bengals had a rivalry with each other, and that the two teams absolutely despised each other? Oh, you don't? Well, apparently, in 1994, they did. Because Buddy Ryan had some beef to pick, completely out of nowhere, and completely unprompted, with Bengals head coach Dave Shula. As in, a man who he had never faced before as a head coach, and a man who had not said a peep about Buddy Ryan before. It's a bizarre controversy that we're going to take a deep dive into today. Because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, the strangest controversy in the absolutely controversial career of Buddy Ryan. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context to understand the game that this man right here, Buddy Ryan, was about to embark on. It's December 18th, 1994. It's week 16 of the NFL season. And as we're in the penultimate week of the year with the season coming to a close, we've got an interconference battle on our hands between the Arizona Cardinals and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cardinals have not made the playoffs since moving to Arizona, and have not made the playoffs since the strike-shortened 1982 season when they were in St. Louis. If you want to learn more about that playoff appearance, you can do so by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, under Buddy Ryan, in his first season in charge of the Cards, they've got a shot to break the drought, and to finally bring playoff football to the desert. Through 14 games, after a 1-4 start, the Cardinals find themselves at 7-7, and are tied with 4 other teams at 500 for that final wildcard spot. They have no room for error whatsoever. They have to win out to have any shot at making the playoffs. But if they win their final 2 games, they can make the playoffs. Buddy Ball has been somewhat of a revelation, as even if the offense has been porous, which is pretty typical for Buddy Ball, the defense has single-handedly gotten the Cardinals this far. So with 2 games to go, who do Buddy Ryan and company have to play first? Well, they have to play their home finale against this man right here and his team, Dave Shula and the Cincinnati Bengals. And the good news for the Cardinals is that the Bengals kind of stink. Whereas the Cardinals have everything to play for, outside of pride, the Bengals have nothing to play for. They sit at 2-12 with the second worst record in football, only better than the Houston Oilers, who just about gutted their entire roster in the offseason. They have a porous defense that's allowed 348 points, or 24.8 points per game, which is the worst total in the AFC. They have an abysmal offense that scored just 236 points, or 16.8 points per game, which is the second worst total in the conference, only ahead of the Houston Oilers. Their point differential of -112 was the second worst in the AFC, only behind the Houston Oilers. And for the man that you've been watching this whole time in charge of the operation, Dave Shula, it was another rough season after a 5-11 campaign in 1992 and a 3-13 campaign in 1993. Through 3 seasons, Shula, the son of the legendary Don Shula, had gone just 10-36, coming out to a winning percentage of 21%. And while you could say any given Sunday and all of that jazz, it didn't look like things were going to get a whole lot better on paper this Sunday against the Cardinals, seeing as the Cards were 7-point favorites and the Bengals had won just one of their last 18 road games. But if you're Buddy Ryan, it's very easy to look ahead, right? It's very easy for your team to look ahead and not necessarily prepare for this game. You've got every reason in the world to be confident, having won 2 straight games, with your last win being a come-from-behind victory late in the fourth quarter against Washington, and having won 4 of your last 5. It would be very easy for this to be a letdown game, where you're looking ahead to the final game against Atlanta and possibly a playoff spot, and you forget about the Bengals. So in a situation like this, most coaches would talk to the press about how the Bengals are a better team than their record shows, how they are still a professional team, and how they've given some good teams fits this season, including the number 1 team in the AFC, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who played at home and only beat them by 4 points earlier in the year. That's what most coaches would do here. But not Buddy. Oh no, not Buddy Ryan. Because he decided to do something absolutely bizarre. He took the time, completely unprompted, to bash this man right here, Dave Shula, and talk not just about how bad of a head coach he was, but that he should be fired. Seriously. Ryan started off by saying that Shula and the Bengals were in the middle of an 8-year rebuilding program. And if that wasn't enough, he followed it up by saying on Shula, well, he's getting every opportunity, isn't he? Most coaches don't get that. It's a tough business. Usually, you have to produce to stay. Seriously, Ryan flat out said that with any other organization, Shula would have been fired by now for how terrible he was as a head coach, which is probably true. And when Ryan was asked about Shula's Bengals and what he knew about them, seeing as Ryan was the defensive coordinator for the Oilers in 1993, while Shula was manning the sidelines in Cincinnati, Ryan said, they were a struggling football team. The game was never in doubt whenever we played them last year. Keeping in mind that in the 2 games that the Oilers played the Bengals, the Oilers won both, and outscored the Bengals 64-15 across the matchups. So Ryan's defense did its job. Again, most coaches would use this as an opportunity to talk about how they can't just look past the Bengals and that we have to do our jobs, because any team in this league can beat you. But Buddy Ryan is out there publicly calling for Dave Shula to be fired and talking about how bad of a team they were. Keep in mind that never, not once, not one time, did Shula say a peep about Ryan. When Shula heard these comments, he flat out said, I have no comments on anything that comes from Phoenix. This was completely unprompted. It would almost be like if Patrick Mahomes were to trash talk right now about Drake May, completely out of nowhere. Which raises the question, aside from the fact that Buddy Ryan just loves speaking, why on earth did Buddy do this? Well, there's probably 2 reasons. Number 1, there was definitely some bitterness with how he left Philadelphia. When he took over as the head coach of the Eagles in 1986, the Eagles were a bad football team. They had 4 straight seasons with a losing record and hadn't finished higher than 4th in the division since 1981. However, by year 3 in 1988, Ryan had the Eagles in the playoffs. In his 5 seasons, Ryan had a winning record, made the playoffs 3 times, and even won the division once. And yet, despite that, Ryan got fired after 5 seasons. You can argue whether the firing was the right call, because there's some debate on both sides as to whether the Eagles should have canned him. But the point remains, Ryan got fired after making the playoffs 3 straight times, and after 5 seasons. And here comes Dave Shula, granted with a much different organization, but here comes Dave Shula who gets to keep his job after stinking this much and showing no signs of improvement? It's almost like if you're making $17 an hour and went to grad school and have all of the qualifications, and yet your friend is making $25 an hour with a different company in the same industry despite not going to college. There's some bitterness there. And number two, even though Ryan and Shula never really interacted, Ryan probably had a disdain for Shula dating back to the end of the 1985 season, when the Eagles fired Marion Campbell as their head coach and were looking for a new man in charge. It seemed like it was going to come down to two candidates for the job. In one corner, you had Buddy Ryan, a man who had been coaching in some capacity since 1961, the defensive coordinator of the Bears since 1978, and the man who was the engineer of arguably the greatest defense of all time with the 1985 Bears. The 85 Bears were 15-1, allowed 12.4 points per game, won the Super Bowl, shut out two of the three teams in the playoffs, and led the league in just about every single defensive category. And in the other corner, the prime candidate for the job was this man right here, Dave Shula, as in a man who had only been coaching since 1982, who never held any coordinator position, who only got a job in the first place because of his dad, and who was still in college when Ryan took over as Chicago's defensive coordinator. Eagles general manager Harry Gamble said at the time, "Dave Shula is our major candidate." You're telling me that Buddy Ryan, maybe the greatest defensive coordinator of all time, and Dave Shula, a 26-year-old who was only on his staff because his dad is the head coach, are in the same category? Ryan probably felt animosity toward Shula because Shula was being gifted all of these opportunities that Ryan wasn't. And when Ryan finally had the chance to square off against Shula head-to-head, he was going to take every opportunity to bash him. It's almost like that kid in school that you never spoke to, and seemed nice enough, but he had super rich parents and got into Harvard, while you also got into Harvard, but your grades were better, and you didn't have the legacy status. If you had his grades, there's no way you're getting in. You hate them, but you don't really have a personal reason to hate them. It's not like they bullied you or talked down to you. You just hate them because of what they got to do without having to work as hard for it as you did, and for how many chances they theoretically got, while you had to walk on a tightrope with every single thing that you did. And that's how, before this game, Buddy Ryan created a controversy with Dave Shula, seemingly out of thin air, because the Bengals and the Cardinals don't naturally hate each other. Which raises the question, how did the Cardinals play in this game? Well, even though they definitely could have looked past the Bengals based on Buddy Ryan's comments on how bad they were and how much their coach stunk, turns out the Bengals really did stink, and the Cardinals won this game with relative ease. Even after the game, Ryan had no problem twisting the knife some more. When asked about how good Arizona looked offensively, he said, well, their defense isn't very good. The Cardinals won the game 28-7, never trailing at any point and leading 21-0 at the half. It was the largest win for the team all year. The Cardinals had over 41 minutes of possession, controlling the ball for nearly 70% of the contest. The Bengals turned it over 3 times, compared to none for Arizona. And the Cardinals not only doubled the Bengals' first down total, winning that battle 24-12, but doubled their yardage total, winning that battle 364-189. This game was pure and utter domination from start to finish. So even though Buddy was incredibly harsh with his unprompted comments, he was right. They hated him because he spoke the truth. Of course, the great irony in all of this is that in the battle between these two teams behind me right here, Dave Shula somehow actually outlasted Buddy Ryan. Ryan was let go in Arizona after a disappointing 4-12 season in 1995, while Dave Shula, because Mike Brown was an idiot and either had the patience of a saint or was too cheap to do anything, actually stayed on past 1995 and wasn't canned until midway through the 1996 season. So I guess even though Dave Shula didn't win the game, he got the last laugh on Buddy Ryan, if you want to call it that. But I don't know. Both Buddy Ryan's stint in Arizona and Dave Shula's stint in Cincinnati were absolutely terrible. God, they were bad. Buddy Ryan has gotten himself involved in some bizarre controversies before, which isn't too surprising. considering how much he speaks and how much of his personality he exudes on a daily basis. But this might be the strangest one of them all, because again, it truly came out of nowhere to the untrained eye. Shula never said a word to Ryan to instigate this. Shula never interacted with Ryan in the past, nor did he have any real reason to. And Ryan had to get his team ready for a big game to keep their playoff hopes alive, where the last thing you want to do is to treat your opponent lightly and treat them like a garbage team that can't go out there and win the game. But that's exactly what Buddy Ryan did here to close out the 1994 season. Because leading up to the Cardinals-Bengals game in 1994, I think it's safe to say that Dave Shula and Buddy Ryan were not exactly buddy-buddy. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.